Satnam, Satnam, and welcome to the second session of the Revolutionary Breath Workshop Series. This is a makeup session. Obviously, the tech didn't work in the original class. So here we are in a study room in the lovely Morris Library, giving you probably a condensed version of the class. But we're going to hit all the major points so you can know where we are. All right, so in this week's class, we worked with the second allowing of the revolutionary breath. Remember, there's 3 allowings. So the second allowing is allowing yourself to become aware of the stories, the emotions, the narratives that influence the shape of your breathing, the shape of your posture, the rate of your breathing, your whole breath cycle. So when we become aware of our narratives, we are using that first allowing to feel how our bodies are responding. This is where we're feeling our breathing pattern, but we're also starting to track that inner dialogue. And that leads us to understanding some of our deepest assumptions about reality, about ourselves, about others' behaviors. And then that allows us to question those assumptions and see if they're really working for us. So we're going to begin with a quote from Rumi. There is a way of breathing that is a shame and a suffocation. And there's another way of respiring, a love breath that lets you open infinitely. There is a way of breathing that is a shame and a suffocation, and there is another way of respiring, a love breath that lets you open infinitely. And it seems like everybody would want the love breath, right? Who wants to be breathing with shame and suffocation? But the love breath is actually far more challenging because opening infinitely, opening even just a little bit, challenges our sense of self, challenges our boundaries, our identities, and all those stories that we have that keep us in a place where we feel like, okay, I understand the world, I understand who I am in the world, and this is my, maybe not comfort zone, because it can be a very uncomfortable position we put ourselves in, but this is where I feel like I'm right about things. So as you open and you breathe and you open and you breathe, these assumptions have to transform. But they transform on their own. So this is an allowing. Remember, this is never about forcing yourself or somebody around you into a different pattern. It's the practice of observing, questioning, and feeling, and allowing yourself to see what happens with those. No force, no control, just allowing. So we're going to open now with our breathing awareness practice focused on this second allowing. So come into a comfortable seated position. If you're wearing a belt like I am today, go ahead and loosen that and loosen the top button of your pants. You can be seated. If you're seated in a chair like I am, just make sure that your feet are flat on the floor and that your knees are above your ankles and you are supported and you can have a tall spine. If you're sitting on the floor, again, make sure you have enough pelvic support so the tops of your hips are higher than the tops of your knees. And just let your spine feel tall, your chin drop down, back of the neck becoming long, but your head isn't tilting forward. It's just a changing of the angle, the back of your jaw. Let your eyelids close. Just start to pay attention to the motion of your breath. As you track this sensation of breath, let yourself let go of any unnecessary tension in your tongue, in your jaw, your shoulders. your brow, the muscles around your eyes, the back of your jaw. Release any unnecessary tension between your shoulder blades. All the way down the spine. Let your belly move freely, opening and expanding on the inhale, and drawing in on the exhale. Use your navel point, that yogic anatomy place about 2 inches below your belly button and 2 inches into your body. Use your navel point to complete your exhales. As you're exhaling, your navel point draws back toward the spine and then up toward the heart. In and up. Let yourself dwell in that empty space after the exhale until you feel the next inhalation arising. No need to reach for it, just allow it to arise. And as it does so, completely soften your body. So the first thing to expand with this big, deep, diaphragmatically led breath is your belly. Your belly expands at the beginning of the inhale. Then your ribs expand as the mid-lungs begin to fill. And finally, your chest lifts a little bit and your shoulders even come up. At the very end of your exhales, the upper lungs fill and this becomes expanded. And then your exhales, keep that body tall, keep your spine lengthened, and just use the same order. First your belly draws in, then your ribs begin to contract in, and then your chest softens, your shoulders lower. You can even draw your sternum back to the rib cage. All the while, on that exhale, your navel point is pulling in and up. Pause after the exhalations. And allow yourself to experience the inhale. The active exhale and the passive inhale allow us to experience the framework of breathing wherein with the exhale we're giving completely. And with the inhale we are receiving effortlessly. Now that you are tuned into the feeling of your breathing and you're actively breathing through this big 3-part yogic breath, belly, ribs, chest, begin to tune into your face, the muscles of your face, and become aware of any thoughts that are there in connection with your face. What do you think about your face? What are the stories that you have about your face? And if you don't have any stories with words, is there a tone? Is there a sound or a color, a shape, a flavor? Any of the senses? And just notice what emotions and what stories arise about your face. Keep noticing your breath, stay with your breath at the same time that you're tracking your thoughts and the stories and beliefs that give rise to your thoughts. Now bring your awareness to your mouth, to your tongue. What are the stories there? Stories about what you say, what you don't say, what you eat, what you don't eat or drink. The mouth is a very meaningful orifice. What are your stories that you have about your mouth? Move on to your neck and shoulders now. With our shoulders, we can ask ourselves stories about what we're carrying, what we're shouldering for ourselves, for others, for people like us. What are you shouldering, and how does that affect your breathing? And bring your awareness lower down now into the heart center, the front at the breastbone, and the back between the shoulder blades and out into that band across the back, right below the shoulder blades. And this is your heart. What are the stories, the thoughts, the feelings, the emotions that you have about this area of your heart? This area of your body. This is also the chest. So for women, this is your breasts, and for men, this is your chest, your pectoral muscles. So what are the stories that you have about your breasts, your chest, and your heart, all held in this area of the body? Just notice what arises and notice the connection that has to your breathing. So moving on down now to your abdomen, to your belly. What are the stories that you have about your belly? The feelings you have about your belly? How do those thoughts and feelings shape your breathing? Wrap your awareness now to the back of your body, back of your torso. This is your back side. Who's got your back? What are the stories, the emotions, the feelings that you have about your lower spine, your mid-back, your upper back? Your back supports you. Does your back support you? Do you feel supported? Stay with the stories, stay with your breath. Now bring your awareness down into your pelvis, the floor of your pelvis. Remember that's a diaphragm, and it too moves with the inhalation and exhalation. When it's supple and relaxed, it descends on the inhalation and draws back in and up on the exhalation. So your hips, your pelvis, what do you feel about your hips? Think about your hips. Can you feel your breath down into your hips, your sacrum, all the way to the ischial crest, the sides of your hips, and pelvic floor. Stories, thoughts, feelings. And bring your awareness to your sex organs, your genitals. This is a good one for being charged up with feelings and thoughts and stories and beliefs, personal and cultural. See what arises. Keep following your breath. Big, expansive inhales, deep, complete exhales. Let your awareness now travel down to your thighs, the backs of your legs, your hamstrings, the tops of your legs, your quadriceps, your inner thighs, your outer thighs. Stories, beliefs about this part of your body, feelings, statements. Lots of shoulds can be held here in our legs. Breathe and feel. Moving down to your knees. Stories, thoughts, feelings you have about your knees. You might not sense your breathing motion all the way into your knees, but the thoughts you have about your knees will affect the shape of your breathing, so just do your best to track both. Bring your awareness down to your lower legs and your ankles and your feet. And release that component of tracking the mental aspects, the cognitive chatter, the feelings, the stories, and move your awareness back to your lower belly, to your navel point. Just focus on the feeling, the physical feeling of your breath in your belly. Expansive inhale, deep, complete exhale, drawing the navel point in and up. And release that focus. Breathe normally. Keeping this sort of meditative focus on a piece of paper, write down 1, 2, or 3 of the thoughts, stories, emotions, beliefs that came up for you as you were tracking your body and tracking the stories that you have about your body, in your body. And just write down a few of those, 2 or 3 tops. You can pause the video while you do this. Okay, so when we have these stories that we're working with, and we're focusing on the body as where these stories are housed, there's a couple of different layers to think about. So first, the cognitive layer, and we're gonna deal with this a couple of times. But starting out here with these stories as they arise, very, very useful to sort of ask of them, and that means, question mark, and that means, and that means, and that means. So you're breathing, you're feeling your way through all this stuff, and something comes up. It's got a real charge, and like, oh, it gives you that little inner jolt of, wow, that's a big deal to me. Let's say it's something with the shoulders. You know, like I'm shouldering all the financial responsibility in my household, something like that, right? And feeling alone and unsupported in that, and it creates a lot of tension in your shoulders. But more than that, you can start to ask yourself, okay, so when I think about my shoulders and just I feel like I'm shouldering this burden, and that means, okay, that means, and so if this were my thing, I would be saying, okay, well, and that means that I'm on my own, all right? And that means my partner isn't respecting me, isn't contributing with this labor. And that means, you know, gosh, maybe we're just really not pulling equally, and that means, well, maybe we're not compatible, and that means, oh my gosh, maybe we shouldn't be together, and that means, oh my gosh, now I have to strategize how I'm gonna, you know, move out, and who's gonna get which dog, and that means I'm going to be sad, and I'm going to feel bad. So you see what I'm saying? It can snowball, and we think, oh, well, that's a little crazy, that's not what I'm thinking, but it's very, very clear when you start playing with this, that charge that you feel about, I'm taking care of the finances on my own, let's say, as an example, is charged with what? It's charged with this feeling. And when I realize that for me, let's say, that means at the end of the day, I'm going to feel sad and lonely and, you know, die with great finances and, you know, no love, something like that. I mean, this isn't about it being rational or normal. This is about really letting yourself feel, wow, for me, where does this go? You know, where's that charge coming from? What's the crazy that I'm believing? Because for me, let's say with this example, it's not a burden for me to do the finances on my own, something like that. I enjoy it. I'm happy. I love doing it. But as soon as it starts to feel like a burden, you know, it's tapping into all these different beliefs. It's tapping into these things about partnership and, you know, the future. For me, it always goes into partnership issues. That's my big, like, neurotic zone. But it could also tap into, I have to do everything on my own. I'm never supposed to ask for help. That's what being an adult is, something like that, right? So instead of saying, hey, honey, can you help me out with this month, or something like that, I would just keep doing it myself. So it's not okay to ask for help. That shows vulnerability. I don't want to be vulnerable. If I'm vulnerable, I'm seen as weak. If I'm seen as weak, then I'm not respected. If I'm not respected, then I'm in danger of not getting the things that I need, that I want, achieving the things that I need and I want. You see where that could go as well. So you just follow yourself. You're following an emotional kind of logic. And like I said, it's not about it being rational or normal or acceptable. It's about it being really deeply honest. You're really getting into the grit of some of the crazy thinking that we have that drives the constrictions in our breathing. Rumi, again, that breathing that's a shame and a suffocation, it's driven by those beliefs that we're isolated, that we're going to be lonely, that we have to be a certain way in order to be right, to be good. And versus opening infinitely, it's like, wow, okay, well, I'm going to ask for help. that makes me feel vulnerable. I'm going to be with that. Or I'm going to enjoy doing this thing on my own and realize it really isn't a burden. I love contributing this way to our household. Those sorts of things. Breathing your way through it allows a new story, a new pattern of emotion to arise. It's really authentic because it's really enfleshed. It's really in your body. Now, this brings us to, how is this in your body? I like to call your nervous system your house of thought, right? We think of thought, we think of emotion as abstract, okay? And we think of our body as concrete. But just like we talked about in the first session a little bit about the chemistry of emotion, there is a neurochemical aspect to all of these stories, all of these emotions, all of these beliefs. And they're happening primarily in your nervous system, really your nervous system and your endocrine system. And but I focus on the nervous system because it's the contractions of nerves that are situated deep in the muscle tissue that give us the shape of our bodies, give us our posture, and therefore let us know how open we are in our breathing. So your nervous system is your house of thought. Just think about that for a minute. Your posture is your manifested autobiography. Three-dimensional living every single day. So the nerves go everywhere in your body, places you're not even aware of. As I'm sure you found out if you've ever had something unusual and painful show up, you're like, I didn't know I had feeling there. But you do. Nerves are everywhere. And it's their innervation of the muscle tissues of our body that allow us to move things around voluntarily and involuntarily. So as we think, so we breathe. As we breathe, so we think. So when you notice those narratives, add to it that rich layer of bodily awareness, and you can really start to work transformatively. We're used to thinking about our stories as the only way for us to gain access to transformation. All our modern psychology is basically based in talk therapy. We're going for the narrative, the story. But you can change the stories even faster and more authentically when you're feeling them in your body and you're using your body to track the full magnitude of the beliefs and the stories. And that means, and that means, and that means feel it. Be with it. Okay. So on your handout, you have 2 pages. And the first page has some figures, and we're going to embody these now. The first of these is called the red light reflex. So I'm standing up. And the red light reflex it's also called the startle response. It exists in all mammals. And it is a very fast, it just takes fractions of a second for the full manifestation of the startle response to move through your whole body. And it's a contraction of the front of the body. And I'll do it from the side here so you can see. So if you hear a very startling sound, what you start to do instantly is chest draws back, shoulders come forward, head comes forward. Because the shoulders are pulling forward, the arms are coming forward. The whole rectus abdominis is crouching down, so you're protecting all your inner organs. Shoulders are hitching up around your jaw, the back of your neck here. Your pelvis tightens, buttocks tighten, the legs draw together at the knees, and it even moves all the way down to your toes, where your toes pointing together, like when you're pigeon-toed, and the toes flare up. So you basically end up like this. This is the startle response. And all the muscles of your face have become tight. And so this is a startle response. So join me in this, move through it slowly, and stay here. Now let your eyelids close in this response and just start to feel how constricted your breathing is in the front. Your belly obviously can't move. And I want you to just stay in this posture and let your eyelids close and start to focus on your breathing. Let your breathing very slowly unwind this posture. Very slowly, micro movements. So really take your time in it. Go ahead and pause the video and just breathe your way through unwinding this posture from the breath out to the form of your body. All right, I'm assuming that you paused the video while you were doing that. All right. This is an excellent practice because the red light reflex is that defensive response, and it gets triggered in small ways constantly throughout the day. So when you go into the red light reflex and then you just focus on your breathing and let your breathing transform your posture, you're working with your house of thought. You see what I'm saying? By keeping the prefrontal cortex consciously engaged with being aware of your breathing and being aware of this transformation of this posture, you're taking an involuntary reflex and breathing your way into its transformation voluntarily. And so you're helping to reset the way that your nerves are discharging through your muscles. So you see the red light reflex in mild form. Usually it's sort of like this. The chest is collapsed, shoulders are pulled forward, pecs are real tight, and the arms spiral forward until the back of the hand faces forward. The pelvis is also usually very tight, the lower back. It's no support in this. And you see, and the head comes very forward. That's a biggie. I think every quarter inch forward with your head is an extra pound. So like this is almost 45 pounds now, instead of when your head is lined up over your heart and then just weighs 8 pounds. But with the red light reflex, you get collapsed breathing. So in order to get enough air, you have to breathe up here with the secondary respiratory muscles because you've totally cut off your primary respiration here with the diaphragm. And I don't know if this looks familiar to you, but this is very much the posture of old age. This is what we associate with becoming old. You naturally just start to collapse. This is what old people look like, you know. Picture me the king. This is old age. But the point of understanding this is recognizing that's not old age. That's just a massive accumulation of the red light reflex. And the essence of the red light reflex is fear. All right? There's lots of things that people experience fear about throughout their lives. You see this start to happen with children. And if you've ever seen a child being scolded, so not even being physically harmed in any way, but just having waves of anger or shaming directed at them, that you see that red reflex, the red light reflex start, and they just start to collapse all right here. As you experience stress throughout the day, you'll collapse this way. It doesn't help that we do so much work on keyboards and stuff with our arms out in front of us because it keeps a lot of tension here through the pecs. So it's very challenging for a lot of people to fully open their heart center, fully open across the front of the shoulders. All right, one of the ways you can tell that you've gotten your shoulders lined up is that your hands, the palm rests very comfortably against the outside of the thigh. And then keeping your head lined up over there. It's a very tall posture. Keeping this all day, keeping this even just for 10 or 15 minutes as you walk around and talk to people can make you feel very vulnerable if this is not your usual posture. If your usual posture is more like this, right? Keeping this very tall posture can make you feel vulnerable. Why? Because it's a different autobiography. You're walking differently, and that is in concert with the house of thought being different now, right? So that's another good experiment to do. So the next reflex on your handout is the red light, or the green light reflex. And this is the reflex that is the embodiment of effort. It is part and parcel of the industrial age. All right, so it begins in infancy with what's called the Landau reflex. And that's in the low back, and that's when a baby is, you know, on their tummy, and they start to lift their head up and orient to the horizon. And it's that lifting of the head at the start. It's being activated low in the back. And as the drive to stand up and to move forward through space, that's all driven by the back being engaged and supporting their posture. And they want to move forward. Everything in them physiologically, this is the beauty of our biology, everything in it has this drive as a human, when you're just learning to walk, to move forward through space. It's so exciting. This response propels you forward. And it's thrilling and it's exciting. And then we, in our society, we tap this for labor. And it starts off, of course, really easy. You know, pick up your toys, these are your chores, take care of the dog, this is your homework to do. And what happens, though, is where we first experience that drive to move forward and to engage the whole world as profoundly organic and totally connected to an inner desire, and is organically directed. It becomes completely co-opted, and it's directed then by others. And those others, as you're growing up, are much bigger than you, right? I mean, there is a huge component of I have to do what they say. They're bigger than me. Oh, and they feed me and take care of me. So there's this baseline of like, oh, that's what I have to do. So we, as a society, we sort of co-opt that Landau response and the drive to move forward into how to labor and how to be a productive person in our society. And that's not a criticism of teaching children how to do things. It's a recognition that we have taken it to a place where it doesn't stay also connected to the organic sense of self, where it's moved so far entirely that for adults, where it's alarm clocks and sales quotas and deadlines and meetings and itineraries, the red light reflex is over-engaged in general. So the red light reflex from the side is this, okay? So go ahead and move from just a neutral standing posture and pull the chest up and forward so the lordosis and lower spine becomes exaggerated. And this is where most of the tension is going to be felt. This is why Americans have so many low back things going on. The chest pulls back, the shoulders pull back, the arms pull back. All right, so you can breathe into your belly a little bit, but it's still really tight through here, okay? The buttocks tighten in a way so that the tension along the IT band and down the outsides of the legs pulls the feet out. So you end up with like a duck walk, all right? So this is the green light reflex. The chin is kind of up. It's a very, there's no support here in the lower belly, right? The navel point totally transforms the alignment, but the navel point is not engaged here. So the back is out and the chest is up and forward. We think of this a lot as like military posture, right? And a lot of people, when you tell them to take in a big, deep breath, this is what they do. And you can only breathe really into your upper chest. You can get a little bit of movement here in the diaphragm, but not much. So go ahead and take on this posture and hold it, really sort of tightening the back, especially down that low back. Becomes very, very, for me anyway, very agonizing up through the sides of the neck here. And now let your eyelids close. Remember, feet are up. It's very tight, all the way up through the pelvis. Tight up through the buttocks, up into the anus, very tight. Let your eyelids close and just begin to pay attention to your breathing. Don't change the posture, just pay attention to your breathing in the posture. Slowly let your breathing, the intelligence of your breathing, begin to release your body. See what releases first and just move very slowly through it. Pause the video and let yourself move very slowly through this release. All right, so that is the red light reflex and the green light reflex. And it's a really good exercise to sort of go through them and let yourself breathe your way out, either way. Sort of think of it like Houdini getting himself out of a locked up position, except that you're doing it in a transformative breath-based way. So if you look at the other side of the handout, there's a couple different versions of the Karpman drama triangle. The Karpman drama triangle is victim, bully, and savior. And it has different names also, but those are essential roles. These are roles that one plays in relationship to other people, in a familial setting, any kind of relationship, a social setting. Those roles exist in stories and fairy tales. They're just part and parcel of how we think about relationship in Western society. So the interesting thing about victim, bully, and savior is that once you are in a story that you're telling yourself, or that somebody is telling you, once you agree to be in this story where somebody is victim, bully, or savior, you're automatically engaged in one of those three roles. You can actually be in two roles sort of at once, but here's the interesting thing. You can, at lightning speed, whip around that triangle, changing which role you're playing. And so I'm sure many of you have had the experience of going from you think that you're in savior mode, you think you're helping, and then somebody becomes resistant, and so you start to become critical and pushy with them. So now you've moved to bully, and they've gone, in your mind, from being a victim that you were trying to help to now, because of their resistance to you, almost being like a bully to you. And so you're just going around this triangle. Who's the victim? Who's the bully? Who's the savior? And once you're on it, there's just no getting off it. All of our stories, all of our beliefs that leave us with constricted breathing patterns are built on this triangle of thinking. So we use our breath to get off the triangle. We use our awareness of our breath to get off the triangle, our awareness of our stories to just get off the triangle. You just let it go. You just start to recognize the ways in which you are on the triangle, being a bully or being a savior, feeling like the victim. That's always a biggie. And the stories that you're using to keep that role in place, and then you just start to, how does it feel? How does it feel in my body? How does it feel? And just like when you're locked into that red light posture, that green light posture, you just breathe your way through and feel the changes that arise in your own flesh. Same thing, how does that story make me feel? Mentally you're tracking the sort of question, and that means, and that means, and that means, and you're breathing your way through all of this. So you're working cognitively and physically. This is the essence of praxis, which I talked about, I think, in the first class. Praxis is theory and practice together. Abstract, concrete, all together. So this is a key component of working with the revolutionary breath, is being able to feel those stories, hear those stories, track the triangular aspects of them, and then just observe. You're just observing. You're not, oh my God, I shouldn't be thinking like a victim. I'm so bad for thinking like a victim. What am I trying to do? Turn myself into a victim? And it's not about that. It's not about criticizing yourself. I had a friend who was doing yogic breathing work, and he got into an upsetting situation, and he was trying to calm down his breathing, and it wasn't working. He was getting more upset that he couldn't calm his breathing down, in addition to being upset about the original situation. And so this is it's not about trying to change your breathing. It's allowing your breath to move, allowing the wisdom of your own core self, which is mysterious even to ourselves, to arise and to transform. And it's going to look a little different inside of each person, feel a little bit different inside of each person. That's what makes it really authentic for you. So, so we're cleaning out our house of thought, right? Oh, the one thing I wanted to say about the triangle is most of us we really try to control being a bully toward other people. However, I haven't met anybody who really does not allow themselves to bully themselves. The self-critical things that we say to ourselves are devastating. They are cruel. You would never utter those to somebody else, let alone to yourself, especially when you're feeling vulnerable. And yet we say terribly, terribly cruel things to ourselves. Relentless, horrible criticisms. And sometimes, yes, they're in the voice of a parent, but that parent isn't there standing and saying it to you. It doesn't matter how many times they said it to you in person. You're saying it to you right now. So you take radical responsibility. You're saying it to you right now. You are being so cruel to you. It doesn't matter who you learned it from, right? Are you a victim to that learning? Well, this is the place to sit with that. The beliefs that you have are the beliefs that you're working with. And when you start to breathe with them, you start to feel how much you can actually transform them. It doesn't matter what other people have said. So that the inwardly directed aspects of the triangle, the things that we tell ourselves that make ourselves really feel like victims, and things that we tell ourselves that are just terribly cruel, yeah, those are really important ones to track as well. Okay, so so before we wrap up, there's a couple of yogic breathing, I think 3 yogic breathing techniques I want to share with you. And I share these with you because I think that it's important to recognize that this is a process, it is an unfolding, and sometimes you just don't know how to get in touch with your breath, but you don't want to feel the feelings that you're feeling right now. And so this is very much, these are training wheels, okay? These are yogic breathing techniques that will change your breathing pattern and bring about physical and emotional ease. It's not the same thing as allowing the other stuff to unfold and move out, and they're not as transformative as quickly. But they're really nice tools to have, because sometimes when something comes up, you want to stay true, you want to stay connected to your breathing, but you really don't want to take yourself into a territory that feels like too much at this time. And so I think it's very important to let people move when they're ready to move into big scary places inside of us. Your breath will always lead you through there, but sometimes you might not have the focus you feel to stay connected to your breath. So these techniques kind of help. They give you something very specific and concrete to focus on. And okay, so the first of these is just inhaling deeply through the nose, belly expanding, ribs expanding, chest lifting, big deep breath in through the nose, and exhaling through pursed lips like you're blowing out a candle that's, you know, several inches away from you. So the pursing of the lips and the blowing out, the cheeks aren't puffed out, it slows down your exhale. So you don't try to go, it's not a bunch of candles, it's just one. You actually imagine, instead that you're making the candle flicker. You don't want to blow it out. Make that imaginary candle flicker. And just let the exhale become really deep and really slow. A slow, long exhale. Inhaling through the nose, exhaling through pursed lips. Just slowly. And this is going to make your exhale so much longer than your inhalation. And this is very calming to your nervous system. And what's nice is that you can do this if you're walking around doing things, housework things, or doing something where you need your hands, or even if you're just doing a report or or a paper, and you feel yourself stressing out, inhaling through the nose and blowing out long and slow through pursed lips will calm the situation down physically. All right, that's the first of them. The second one is also a hands-free practice. And with this one, you roll your tongue and stick it out past your lips. If you can't roll your tongue, make a little beak with your lips. Just pucker them out as far as you can so your lips are extending. In either case, you're getting like a straw. You're making a little straw that you're going to be inhaling through. Slow, deep inhale. Make it as quiet as you can because this makes it noisier. So the quieter it becomes, the slower and deeper the breath becomes. And then exhaling through the nose. And exhaling through the nose. This will actually start to cool your body. This is called Sitali Pranayama. So you're just drinking in through a little straw of your curled tongue or your puckered lips. And exhaling through the nose. I find this one also very calming. I can't do cognitive work, like if I'm writing at the same time, I can't do this one at the same time that I'm writing. But I can do something like laundry, right? So the last one is not hands-free, but it's really beautifully effective, and it's a very nice one to do at the end of the day if you've had a kind of agitated day or your mind is racing. And that is simply closing off the right nostril with the right thumb. Your fingers are together and straight, and they just rest up against that third eye point between the eyebrows above the nose. Your thumb closes off gently. You're not pressing your nose out of shape. Just gently closes the right nostril. The hand rests here. The elbows relax down at the side. So it's totally relaxed. You could place a pillow even under your upper arm if you want extra support, but just totally relaxed and just breathe in slowly and deeply in and out through the left nostril. Let your eyelids close and just slow, deep breath, letting your belly and your ribs and your chest expand and contract all through the left nostril. You can also be relaxing as your eyes are closed to let your eyes roll in and up really gently, just focusing at that third eye point, very relaxing to the eyes, keeping breathing in and out through the left nostril. And relax. So those are 3 bridge techniques to let you into a sweet, calm place if you don't feel that in that moment you have capacity to track and to be present with the stories, right? Sometimes they're big ones and they can take a while to unwind. Just be really loving with yourself, really gently. If you find that you have time, just don't be afraid. There's no part of you that is impossible to be breathed through. No mental or emotional aspect, no physical state that you can't stay aware of your breathing with and thereby transform and loosen and bring healing and ease to. So there's no part of you, there's nothing inside of you need to be frightened of. But until you know that, it can be very nice to have these techniques to hold your hand in case you do feel like, oh, maybe that's too scary for me right now. Until you know that there's nothing too scary, then these are here for you. Okay, so I'm sorry for the abbreviated sort of format of this. The key points are your house of thought is your nervous system. It's what shapes you. your posture, and it is also what is holding all the bioelectrical energy of your thinking as it's moving through your whole body. And even places that you don't feel or sense, places where you don't even feel the motion of breath go to, those are all also in your house of thought. So playing with this at the cognitive level, very, very important. Playing with this at the physical level, obviously very important. Oh, and the final thing are some resources for checking out, dealing with the narrative aspects, when you just want to sit down and work with the narrative aspects. And the first of these is Byron Katie's work called Inquiry, and that's all of her stuff is available at thework.org, O-R-G, thework.org, and she has a wonderful sequence of questions to ask to those big scary thoughts and beliefs. And the first one is simply, is it true? And it's yes or no. No stories. You don't go off on some tangent. You don't justify anything. It's just yes or no. And you sit with it and you breathe with it until you feel very clearly. It's like, oh, that's a yes or that's a no. And it doesn't matter which one it is. And if you say yes, so let's say you go back to that original belief, like I'm shouldering all these finances on my own. Is that true? Well, yes, it's true. It's yes. And then if you say yes, you ask yourself again, can I absolutely know that it's true? And this is a really great question for helping us to feel that subtle difference between that broad, sweeping generality and the way that we are believing it in its entirety, as opposed to a conditioned statement. Well, I'm doing most of it right now, or I'm doing a lot of it right now. Feels very different when we hold it that way. You'll notice when you get into arguments with partners that the statements that are inflammatory are those big generalized things. You never do this, you always do that. There may be truth in it, but the statement isn't true. But when we believe those statements and we find ourselves believing those statements in our bodies, they become really constricted to the breathing pattern. So you just dwell with this, and again, it doesn't matter, but it's just yes or no. And you just wait for your yes or your no to arise. It's a meditation. The third question, and all of this is available on her site, thework.org. The third question is, how does this thought make me feel? How does this belief, this story, make me feel? And you feel it in your body. How does it make you feel? How do I treat other people when I'm believing this to be true? How do I treat myself? How do I, are there any addictions or little micro addictions that arise, whether it's, whiskey or cupcakes? Do I have this, oh God, I just wish I could just forget about this and just sit down and watch some TV and have some chips, What are the sorts of things that arise when you're believing this? And you're just observing. You let your eyelids close and you just picture yourself believing this. What's the situation? Can you see it? And just let yourself believe it. And then you let yourself go through all of that. And this is all happening. You're writing all this out. So it's very slow and methodical. It can take a while, but it's really powerful. And the fourth question that you ask yourself is, who would I be without this thought? So you sort of, again, you see yourself in the situation, thinking this to yourself, except you see yourself in the situation, except you can't think this thought. It's just not even possible. So, you're sitting down let's take that one example. I'm sitting down, I'm paying bills, I'm opening them up, I've pulled up the budgeting software, and I've got the bank to do the online thing, and I can't think the thought, I'm doing this all on my own, I shouldn't be doing this all on my own, I should be getting help with this. I'm thinking that. I can't think any of those things. Well, who am I without that? Well, for me, in this situation, it would be, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I love this. I love playing with this. I love the numbers. I love I feel responsible. I'm giving myself lots of kudos for having budgeted this, and I'm enjoying it. I'm just totally enjoying it. I'm not even thinking anything about my partner. If anything, I'm just feeling love. I'm just feeling so much love for myself, for my beloved, for our household, all of those sorts of things. That's where it would start to go for me. You just let yourself feel like, wow, if I'm not caught up in this story, how do I feel? What's available to me? And you just start to feel that. And then you work through 3 turnarounds. And so you're turning around the thought, the original thought, and playing with it, and you're just playing with its opposites in different ways and looking for examples of those. It's a very thorough unpacking of one little thought, one little belief, very thorough unpacking of it. And it opens up this whole release inside of you. And when you team this up with a lot of bodily awareness, which there's definitely room in this practice for bodily awareness, but when you come at it from a breathing perspective, it really amplifies your awareness of your breathing. When you come at it that way, it's really transformative. It really gets into that house of thought. So if you want to know more about that, go to thework.org, and she has all of the basic instructions and the worksheets that she uses available for free. Plus there's videos of her doing this process with people all around the world. And also, I highly recommend, there's facilitators who do this work, available on Skype, 24, throughout the day, throughout the 24-hour period of a day around the world. So yeah, very cool stuff. The second technique that I think is really useful for getting into these narratives and just being with them is a version of an ancient Hawaiian practice developed by Dr. Hugh Len, and it's called Ho'ononopo, and it consists of 4 statements. And in his version of this, what you do is, when you're triggered by something, something's happening outside you and you become agitated, or you're thinking something and you become agitated, or you're doing a breathing meditation and you can feel tightness, and you can feel the story that's there, or the emotion that's there, you just very lovingly, in your mind, you become very loving, like an endlessly compassionate sort of mother goddess type of love. Very lovingly, you address this state of agitation or fear or hurt or fury inside of you, whatever it is. You address this state within you, and you begin just by saying, I love you. And then you go to the second statement after you've felt the I love you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't notice you before. I'm so sorry I haven't seen what you're trying to tell me. I'm so sorry to have tried to push you out of my life and not feel you. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive me for not seeing you sooner, for trying to cut you out of my life and not feel you, not acknowledge you. Forgive me for not learning, being willing to learn what you're trying to teach me, to listen to you. Any of those sorts of things. I love you. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. And the last one is thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to grow in awareness. Thank you for teaching me that. Thank you for your voice. Thank you for being in me, part of my life. And so those 4 statements can be very powerful for working with emotional charges. Just allowing yourself to embrace them. Okay, so those are the resources. You can look up Ho'ononopo. It's H-O''O''no''no''po, just exactly like it sounds. You can look up Ho'ononopo. Dr. Hugh, H-E-W, Len, L-E-N, he has some stuff on YouTube. There are other variations of the Ho'ononopo practice. They're all pretty awesome. This is the one I'm the most familiar with. Also, those 4 phrases, they don't have, I've heard them used as, I love you, that deep acknowledgement, thank you, just I love you and thank you. And sometimes, so sometimes it's just those 2, and sometimes it's all 4. It's organic, it's your own process, you're connecting, you're feeling, acknowledging, apologizing, making amends within yourself, and letting it go. And it's really kind of surprising how much it transforms the situation around you, the behaviors of others around you. So many, many blessings. Keep on breathing, and I will see you later. Sat Nam.